For those unfamiliar, Little Big Planet is a very charming platform game series with 3 titles to its name, and a few spin-offs here and there. I love this one. The games had a huge focus put into community-created levels, promising an almost endless source of games that can be made, shared, and played online globally. Well, until like almost a year ago, where they completely killed all semblance of online play for each title due to numerous attacks on the servers, and delisted the games from the PlayStation Store, with a lot of these user-created levels being thought to have been lost to time. Originally. See, due to practically every single level from the game's history being archived and downloadable, and a bunch of small online communities still keeping the entire series' online services up, this game is technically still playable in practically the same way it was before. Which means, segue into Five Nights at Freddy's. Some of the most popular games on the platform were, believe it or not, based on Five Nights at Freddy's. Almost to the game's detriment. I remember a lot of people not liking the overabundance of Scary Bear game levels here.
The most played, liked, and hearted pages, which Five Nights at Freddy's Mortal Kombat is #1. What?
With the popularity of the, again, Scary Bear game taking over the YouTube scene at the time, and many other games around it, and horror just being an extremely popular genre on Little Big Planet as a whole, it's not hard to believe that many had tried to either replicate, reimagine, or just, you know, make whatever kind of level based on something related to FNAF in a community-crafted game like this. No.
Oh my god!
And the little old me probably played every single damn one back in the day. Little Big Planet as a series was a game I truly cherished. I love this game to death. Something about how charming and unique the interface was, how fun the levels just were, mixed with, of course, multiplayer, made this series like one of my favorite things ever, probably. And the overabundance of FNAF theme levels probably helped with that a little. So, you know what? It's been a good while. Why don't we revisit a few of the most popular ones here? I sure as hell can't cover every single FNAF level ever made, and see if they were as good as I once thought. Probably the most popular of this entire genre were FNAF co-op levels. I mean, Little Big Planet is a multiplayer game, this makes sense. Believe it or not, even early on, there was a majority of these that did involve players actually playing as the animatronics, fit with different playstyles for almost each character and having to fend off against an active night guard. Specifically, the most popular level of these was Chucky789's new FNAF Scary Multiplayer, that's the title. Based entirely around the first game, this level was solely designed for online play against 4 other players, who'd either play as animatronics or the night guard, you get the point. Well, the night guard had basically every night guard feature, even including a nose honk for the Celebrate poster. Animatronics were much more interesting in how they worked.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
Oh.
I just saw something through that camera. Oh.
These, silly looking guys, who all generally started from the stage on the very left side of the map, moved extremely slowly, and basically had to simply make it to the center office area, with a bathroom access door that allowed passage to the right side as well. Night guards, entrusted with the ability to view the cameras, could stop these animatronics from moving by viewing them in a selected camera spots. Well, for Bonnie and Chica, they act pretty much the exact same here. Freddy is like a little different in that he's able to teleport to a random position on the map to throw off the night guard, but is also susceptible to the same camera spots.
What the?
Oh, where I'm gone. I'm not going there.
However, Foxy completely throws all of this out the window, as he's both much faster than the rest of the crew and not able to be deterred by any cameras, but is only able to leave Pirates Cove for a full minute before literally being booted out of the match. You become a literal spectator afterwards, so you kind of have to make him count here. Our only other night guard benefit here, outside the main game of course, is that if an animatronic is too close to the door for around 3 or so seconds with the lights on, you'll gain literally all of your power back.
Hey,
Full power is crazy. I couldn't even get out of there.
that is true, dude.
It's pretty nice because I'm fairly positive it's like impossible with the power duration you're given at the start. Besides that, this is the entire level basically. There's quite a few problems with general balance, not really much use for the cameras after like 5 seconds of the game starting, and it isn't the prettiest looking game out there, but for the time, and I realize I do say this a lot, I'm unfortunately self-aware, it was a pretty cool way to experience FNAF in some sort of multiplayer capacity. I mean, this came out just about 2 weeks prior to FNAF 2's release. series, like the actual game. Besides that, this is kinda how most of these multiplayer FNAF co-op levels worked here. Whether it was based on a different game or had slightly different mechanics, most of these you can probably just imagine how they play.
Ow. Ow.
At least the ones involving active animatronic playability. The ones without them are still pretty interesting in their own right. Jeremy Monsbach created 4 very popular levels that would be impossible not to individually mention, made to replicate the full night guard experience with a friend. Or 3 more friends, for the first 4 FNAF titles in LittleBigPlanet's. Again, probably one of the first ways to ever do something like this. The level emulating the original first game is kind of bare bones though. It's essentially an extremely simplified version of FNAF for multiplayer purposes. Like, I'm not kidding either, there's literally only one camera spot you're able to solely view here, being Pirate's Cove, because it's all you really need. Concerning the animatronics, Bonnie and Chica act like, you know, Bonnie and Chica. Foxy is... yeah, and Freddy will make his appearance sometimes later on in the night, staying to the right hallway and being in slightly harder to spot locations, kinda like how he acted in the original, who would've guessed. FNAF 2 follows suit, it's pretty straightforward as well. Of course, multiplayer, like, enhances this a little.
Oh my god. I jumped. Yo! My Freddy mask. I'm literally Freddy.
Basically being your standard FNAF 2 office gameplay with every camera spot removed, except, well, I mean, you could probably guess which one. Winding the music box works like a little differently here to make up for the multiplayer access though, as instead of like actually winding it, staying on the camera for the duration of the timer will fully reset it this time, which is admittedly pretty fast. I will say you don't have a lot of time to spare when animatronics enter your office here. It makes multiplayer kind of finicky overall.
So it's just over. So the game is just cooked.
Us both. Exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so you're selling.
This game's so hard.
On to FNAF 3 co-op, and I don't really have much to say. This is surprisingly just FNAF 3. It seriously translates like basically everything from the third game into this tiny little level. From the vents to the functional audio lures, the phantoms, maintenance panel, and like every camera location, except one, strangely. I love how multiplayer works here too, where one player can stay on the maintenance panel and another on the cameras, only being able to use one at a time feels really refined for some reason. Compared to the sort of simplified versions from before, this was like a total shock to me. Springtrap acts almost exactly like he does in the actual game. It's really cool.
Seen the vents? What was that noise? I found him.
The last of these levels, FNAF 4, if you couldn't guess, is once again very faithful. Lots of different audio cues you need to pay close attention to, but they're all pretty loud. Just like Night 6, the original game, at 4 AM, Nightmare Fredbear will appear. I'm not gonna lie, he's pretty hard to deal with.
Hold it! Yeah! Hold it!
I'm gonna dwell a little on FNAF 4 specifically, as it seemed to be one of the most popular titles of the series, outside of the first game, obviously, to get LittleBigPlanet levels just in general. Besides Jeremy's other FNAF 4 level, which was focused more on single player, it's kind of more of the same thing, as an extras menu, and well, every single night from the game, it's pretty accurate all around. There was another level that was also pretty popular at the time, coming from Lance Akiro. I'll be honest though, again, these two are very, very similar in how they approach their general gameplay. What I think is more interesting to cover, however, and how I generally remember this specific level, is that the first iteration of this game actually came out before the release of FNAF 4. Simply using the trailer footage and teasers we got up to that point for the main basis of the gameplay. Though, to be fair, the trailer did feature quite a bit. I especially like the idea that the plus drop sections were just extensions of the regular night mode. I feel like that was a pretty common belief at the time. Regarding sister location levels, Lance also did a really expansive one here. And by expansive, I mean featuring, no joke, every night of the game. Practically every single feature or task with its included hand unit dialogue from the original sister location is either tweaked slightly or just flat out here. Yes, even all the post-night TV episodes, the Funtime Freddy breaker room section, the whole Night 4 segment done in a pretty clever way, and both of the main endings of the game. Getting that secret ending here is a little different though, as instead of going through the right corridor to Funtime Foxy's auditorium in Night 5, you have to wait quite a while in the main control module for the front vent to actually open, which gets you to a recreation of the 8-bit minigame. It works practically the exact same way, just no timer this time, which is admittedly very nice, but it's just a little bit buggier in some areas. I didn't even technically do it correctly here. After giving ice cream to this, like, a blonde-haired girl this time, you're just straight up transported to the private room, and your usual one-on-one against entered. Like I've continued to say, it does work exactly like you'd expect it to. Just less coordination on audio keys this time, it's much more of a visual thing here. And no entered scooching over at the end though. I'm a little disappointed. Lance, in addition, also did an entire level dedicated to the game's custom nights. Again, featuring like every single mode from it. This is crazy. It only really changes like a few aspects of it too, just for the things that, you know, wouldn't like be physically possible here. Outside of these remakes of the game, again, can they really even qualify as that? Or the trained co-op experiences, there were a few more of these pretty popular levels that just stuck out to me here, especially ones that weren't necessarily attempting to just copy the games one-to-one. A Long Night at Freddy's, created by Mars Park 3, approaches FNAF from a different angle. Literally in this case. In this game, instead of just being tied down to your office, it all revolves around a bird's eye view of the pizzeria, where you can fully explore the first game's location to your heart's content from a top-down perspective. Equipped solely with a flashlight, your job here is to literally walk in and survey each singular room in the pizzeria every time that clock ticks a new hour, as per the phone guy's instructions. All while avoiding the standing still animatronics. The game itself really isn't too hard. Check each room every hour and just, yeah, 6 a.m. Simple as that. But the animatronics can make it a bit difficult at times. For example, your flashlights. Pointing it for too long at one of the animatronics will literally just kill you for some reason, so don't do that. Also, every now and then, your power will go out, where you have to venture backstage to turn it back on. And all that's not to mention the whole top-down perspective. It can cost you if you're not paying close attention. Or they'll literally just block where you need to go and you'll die. Aside from all that, a few cool Easter eggs jammed in here and just the simplicity of the level as a whole, this was honestly a really cool game in of itself. Another category of games here, probably shouldn't even be really referred to as that I think should definitely be mentioned here are animations. Little Big Planet 2 and subsequently Little Big Planet 3 with a slightly improved system now allowed essentially entire movies to be made inside levels. Do you like mine? And with it came, well, you know, the series I'm talking about right now. Most, if not literally every single one of these, involved a new security guard working the night shift at a Freddy's pizzeria, and is also as outdated as you'd probably think. Not to put down any of these series, but I think the only one that's really of note here is Psycho 6's Night Watch at Freddy's levels. This series of levels focuses on this guy, getting the job at, you know, the Freddy's, and also subsequently murdering every animatronic he ever comes into contact with. It's purely all slapstick humor. There's really no story of any kind. Just Mr. Cool Guy beating up a bunch of animatronics, and at the end either completely destroying the pizzeria or just burning it down completely.
Tell your boss I quit.
Reminds me a lot of the old Crazy Boris Productions videos, which also got remake animations on Little Big Planet. You can't make this up. But these were really well made, especially for just some kid coming up with this stuff on Little Big Planet of all things. It didn't always lend itself towards like funny meme at the time. Well, sometimes. I like that there's some sentience of continuity between these, and it's definitely the only series ever made to end with Nightmare Fredbear, who's now infused with like the G or T virus from Resident Evil, getting blasted to the side of a mountain where he gets then instantaneously eviscerated. It's quite strange to me that these sorts of levels don't get mentioned anywhere when talking about like FNAF fan animations. I think these things should qualify. Most of them were really only popularized by YouTube re-uploads of the levels themselves anyway. I also really liked this series, created by Nutshell's 9411, basically being what you'd expect from something called FNAF in a nutshell. Just short videos sort of making fun of the games at a time when they were the most popular things on the internet.
Okay, there are way too many characters there.
I love how each animatronic literally looks like they were taken from like a completely different level. Probably because they probably were. Speaking of, something I really haven't mentioned in all these levels so far are the different looks that each animatronic was given here. See, Little Big Planet's customization was a little different from how games sort of operate now. Costumes were given for purchased DLCs, or just from the game's story mode, like usual, but your options were sort of very limited based specifically on that. You couldn't just like upload a Freddy model into Little Big Planet. That wasn't possible. Little Big Planet's character customization was largely based on custom sprays, stickers, and even smaller 3D objects that you could physically staple onto your little sack boy, like this guy. So people had to commonly resort to things like tree logs for Freddy's snout, or as you'd seen, Fazbear's eye sockets for their eyeballs. I just love how each one has a sort of different style to it, either using custom sprays from images in game themselves, or just coming up with something that's a little more familiar to Little Big Planet as a whole. I especially like these boxy sackbot designs. I don't know why. But enough of all that. What if, for some strange reason, you're not necessarily inclined to the not very realistic designs of Little Big Planet? Again, for some unknown reason. I mean, I will say it makes these a lot less scary, I guess. Well, fear not. Five Nights at Freddy's HD, created by Dre Day 1994, is supposedly the most played level that was on Little Big Planet pertaining to FNaF. In fact, it's probably one of the most played levels of all time here. Hard to double check this, so just go with me on this one. But yeah, let's check it out. I don't know, it's my first time looking at it. Oh my. Okay, so when you get down to it, this is essentially just the first night of Five Nights at Freddy's. A very different looking version of it with a sort of functioning animatronics, but it's still Five Nights at Freddy's. In fact, this is probably one of the first, or at least definitely the most popular way to play the first game on a console like pretty early on, as the official port was only released in like late 2019. The only thing that's really different in this level, besides like, you know, is a multiplayer function, in which when joined by another player, or again, 3 others, in Chaos Co-op, you both simply get cursors to browse around with. Actually kind of a fun feature. Well, there's really not a lot to talk about here, besides the funny visuals and phone guy audio.
Now that might sound bad, I know, but there's really nothing to worry about.
I mean, it's still kind of cool to get basically a recreation of the first game in an entirely different one. I'm not sure how, like, exactly legal it is, but, you know. Try to continue with levels essentially exactly like this, all the way up to Sister Location. Almost just carbon copy versions of the first night of each game, made entirely with Little Big Planet assets. Except FNaF 3, that one wasn't finished, I think. FNaF 4 even has the beginning minigame segment. The controls are surprisingly, like, really accurate here, too. Only thing I just have to comment on for each title here is the title screen music, which features their own remix using Little Big Planet's sound assets, I'm assuming, to avoid copyright. But also, they just all sound great on their own.
You can also get jiggy and shake your sack booty.
Concerning any like small details with each level here, I mean, I can't really leave you guys with like just this. FNaF 2 only features Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, and Shadow Bonnie for some reason as threats here. Yeah, Toy Freddy just like disappears entirely. While Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica act pretty much exactly like their original counterparts, Shadow Bonnie is a little more interesting as a mechanic, sorta. Instead of just crashing your game entirely, I think that would be probably impossible to achieve here. If active in your office for too long, you'll just shut down the use of your cameras. So you have to deter it with the mask just like the others. FNaF 3, again, is just the office area. You can't even open the cameras. And FNaF 4 is almost just FNaF 4 copy-paste. There's really not anything all too different for this version. It's pretty impressive. Regarding any other popular recreations on Little Big Planets, the only one I was able to find went under the name of FNaF 1, FNaF 2, FNaF 3 by Mooserick. And not to put down the remakes, if that's even the right term here, that I literally just mentioned, but this is definitely a larger improvement overall, if we're talking straight gameplay. The visuals are still a little wonky. The levels here are all scarily accurate to the originals. They all feel extremely smooth overall. Each night can be played back to back for each title, up to the 5th. The animatronics act normally, and even some small quality of life fixes are surprisingly featured here. Specifically, this FNaF 2 level feels really good to play. There's like little to no lag or clunkiness here that feels almost routine for this game. Concerning the very small amount of differences, there's a custom loading screen featuring the map of the game selected this time, as it's missing from the general camera system, and an intro cutscene to go with it, featuring the 3D office area for each game. Freddy for FNaF 1 will return back to the stage when failing to enter your office, thank God. The Easter eggs for FNaF 2 are much more prevalent here. I got literally every single one except Shadow Freddy multiple times. Phantom Puppet won't force the camera down, and FNaF 3's good ending doesn't seem to be achievable here. All that, and the fact that multiple camera renders for certain animatronics are just flat out duplicated sometimes, looks really funny in FNaF 3. This is a flat out fantastic recreation of these games in Little Big Planet. No wonder it won a Guinness World Record for the most hearted Little Big Planet adventure is real. Moving on now, some of these levels, while not necessarily being recreations of the first game or the second, or all of them, utilize some of the same features for their own parody game of sorts. Five Nights at the Collector's, created by One-Eyed Banshee, remains something that is, well, in of itself, a remake of sorts, kinda. I know, I'm sorry, I kinda lied. Here, instead of our, like, classic animatronic character guys, they've all been replaced by certain characters from the first game's story mode. I'm referring to Little Big Planet here. Yeah, the Collector is the first game's main villain, in a way. Like Moose Rick's levels from before, this is a really smooth translation of the first game's mechanics and general gameplay into Little Big Planet's. I'd say even more than, like, almost anything I've covered. The camera system controls practically just like the original. The Office gameplay is, well, as smooth as Office gameplay can physically be, and the characters don't stray too far from their original counterparts. Speaking of which, yeah, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, at least their intended game mechanics, are practically all here, just replaced by different character appearances, being the Collector as Freddy, the King as Bonnie, Frida the Bride as Chica, and the Queen as Foxy, from, again, the first Little Big Planet story mode. It reminds me a lot of old FNaF fan games in a way, when they all just kind of translated the first game's gameplay and switched the characters around. Overall, not too much to talk about, just a charming and surprisingly well done level here. And I also wanted to mention Five Nights at Sackbotics by Solid Wires, because it's like almost the exact same thing. It's a charming parody game that, again, translates this gameplay loop pretty well for what it's based on. My only gripe I can really give it comes with how quickly animatronics jump scare you when at the door. This is like way too fast. It comes with its own map and is a little more creative in areas than, well, anything else here, really, I guess. Although the animatronics work like basically the exact same way. Among other recreations came recreations of FNaF. Oh, okay. One Night at Flumpty's got a really accurate level from Slayer Dragon 57. I really don't want to talk about this one though. FNaF Death Run, or Mortal Kombat levels. Again, something that kind of plagued the platform at the time, but looking back, these are, well, they're not really lying.
You're actually done for.
Role-playing games, usually just a simple map of a pizzeria with a few animatronic costumes. I mean, I definitely spent a lot of time here. 3D roaming levels, just people kind of showing off how cool their maps are. And so many more. Little Big Planet allowed a resource of creativity for a lot of people, even Five Nights at Freddy's fans. And the fact that these levels, almost being fan games in their own rights, are essentially just abandoned and largely unplayable is like a little upsetting. And the fact that Sony really did not care these levels that took quite a lot of effort were backed up at all is, I mean, also a little upsetting. A little big upsetting. Will we ever see a continuation of this game series later on? I mean, who knows? But I don't doubt if there were, we'd probably still see a whole lot of FNaF levels, so they'd probably just scrap the whole thing if we're being honest.